Welcome to Tokyo Wave, recorded in a live studio in Harajuku, Japan, with your hosts Aaron and Parker. Alright everyone, welcome to episode 128 of Tokyo Wave. We're your hosts Aaron Randall
and Parker Allen. On Tokyo Wave, we bring you weekly updates from our studio in Harajuku.
Join us in segments featuring this week's top news,
political happenings,
business,
and other random garbage.
To get us started, here are this week's top news highlights.
Japan drops to 104th in gender disparity rank in World Bank survey.
Japan's job availability down in January for first time in over 2 years.
Number of listed Japanese islands more than doubles under government recount.
This week in Japan. Alright, so our first story. Japan drops to 104th in gender disparity rank in World Bank survey.
Kyodo News has reported that Japan ranked a dismal 104th in the World Bank's latest report on women's economic opportunities, continuing to trail the rest of the group of 7 developed member countries over the progress towards gender equality in the law.
The annual survey, covering 190 countries and territories, assesses gender gaps in laws and regulations across 8 areas, including workplace, pay, parenthood, and entrepreneurship.
In the newly released report, Japan scored an average 78.8 out of 100, sharing the same score with countries such as the Philippines.
Japan did especially poorly in certain categories, scoring 50 out of 100 in workplace matters and 20 out of 100 in pay, although it did get full marks for pensions and mobility.
20 out of 100 in pay, that is pretty bad.
Yikes, poverty bad.
Among other G7 members, Canada, Germany, and France each scored 100 on the index, which means that women are on an equal legal standing with men in all of the areas measured. Italy and Britain followed with a score of 97.5, and the United States with 91.3.
Japan's ranking has continuously fallen, ranking 74th in 2020, 80th in 2021, and 103rd in 2022.
So it's like we're winning, except for the exact opposite.
Yeah, kind of like the snowball going down the mountain. You know, like snowball's getting bigger and bigger. So I guess if the point of the game is a snowball to hit a bunch of pins, then it's a win condition.
And at the bottom of the mountain is last place. I wonder who is last place.
I don't even want to look at the list because it would probably just frustrate me. It's probably countries, you know, developing countries and whatnot. Like, no offense to developing countries, but Japan, man, come on, we're a G7 country, right?
Yep, and we're 103rd. Globally, the World Bank said that the average score in the latest report was 77.1, an improvement by only half a point from its last survey. So we're better than the average, but still 103rd.
Yeah.
That must mean there's some really low scores.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
The report also said there were only 34 gender-related legal reforms in 18 countries, the lowest number since 2001.
The World Bank warned in its report, quote, "At the current pace of reform, it would take at least 50 years to approach legal gender equality everywhere. In many countries, a woman entering the workforce today will retire before she'll be able to gain the same rights as men."
You know, Japan has talked a big talk in recent years about women empowerment, but I'm not so sure if it's walked the walk. What do you think, Aaron?
Well, you know, I think along with women empowerment, there's a lot of other, like, global surveys and stuff that measures Japan against other countries. I think the Japanese government doesn't pay attention to these kinds of surveys. I don't think they care, to be completely honest with you. Because if they cared, wouldn't they make a statement about it?
Well, you know, when there's bad news, usually the common tact of bureaucrats is to pretend like it doesn't exist. So I'm not totally surprised by the lack of reaction, but, you know, with Japan's ranking continually falling,
yeah,
you would think that somebody in a position of power, I mean, there's a minister in charge of women empowerment and kind of gender equality. You'd think they'd see this and be like, we should make some laws. This is pretty bad.
My personal opinion on this is that it needs to kind of be a grassroots movement. And, you know, in tech and in gaming, and there's a lot of panels. I recently saw a panel. It was called Not Another All Men's Panel. I think it was done by Code Chrysalis here in Tokyo. And I think that kind of stuff is what is going to actually make the change here in Tokyo. That's a very local approach. But I mean, you know, whenever people are, you know, making kind of public appearances, doing talks, doing panels, you have to include women. You have to include people of different backgrounds, right? I think Japan has a really bad reputation for, you know, being extremely male dominant in that sense. And a lot of the people that go to the events are all men as well. And those events just kind of suck anyways.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, how many events in Japan have you been to in your life where there wasn't a single person under 50 and it was an all-male panel?
Usually if it's like Japanese language events, that's how it is.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even start to think about counting that number. I mean, it's like, you know, there's that word manel, you know, which means like a panel full of men.
I haven't heard that, but
yeah,
I totally get it.
It's like in Japan, manel is, you know, the norm, not the aberration.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's why I think it has to be grassroots. I think there's a lot in the startup scene here in Japan, which needs more money, as we'll be talking about later. We need more, you know, VCs and people with money to help fund a lot of this. But in the startup scene, there is a big push to get more women into higher positions. I know that a lot of boot camps that I've been working with have a big push for gender equality, you know, getting to that, at least the 50-50 mark, which seems to be almost impossible for a lot of tech companies and boot camps to get to. But I think we're seeing strides in that area. But as far as like on a macro level, absolutely not.
Oh, I mean, look at the CEOs of, you know, major Japanese companies.
Yeah.
You will find very few women.
Oh, yeah.
Also in politics, Japanese women are very underrepresented, although I have seen a lot more female candidates for office, which is a move in the right direction.
Yes, in the previous elections, there's been quite a lot, like running for office, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But obviously they have to get in the office in order to change those statistics.
Right.
Lots of work to do.
Oh, yeah.
103rd. Kinda sad.
Yep.
And up next, Japan's job availability down in January for the first time in over 2 years.
Kyoto News has reported that Japan's job availability ratio fell in January for the first time in over 2 years, as more people sought jobs with better working conditions amid an economic recovery from the coronavirus pandemic.
The job-to-applicant ratio dropped 0.01%. Ooh, look at those numbers, from the previous month to 1.35, marking the first decline since August 2020. The ratio means that there were 135 job openings for every 100 job seekers.
You know, I think it used to be like 2 jobs for every one person, right?
Yeah, and then the pandemic happened, and now there's only 1.35 jobs for.
The drop in the job availability ratio came as the number of people seeking work increased 0.6% from the previous month, while the number of jobs fell 0.1%.
Job offers in the information and communications sector decreased 7.3% from a year earlier, while those in construction firms shed 5.4%. On the other hand, accommodation and restaurant services job offers grew 27% on the back of recovering tourism demand. So, basically the high-paying jobs are disappearing, but the low-paying jobs are off the scales.
Interesting. That's kind of in line with what's happening with the jobs that AI is actually successfully automating, which, to everyone's surprise, is not the blue-collar jobs. It's the white-collar tech jobs. So
yeah, it's like Google employees always say, we're always engineering to put ourselves out of a job and then make a new job. But unfortunately, then Google just fired a bunch of their workforce.
Oh, everyone, the layoffs are insane. I was talking to a friend in the industry that used to be at Facebook, and it's just every company now. It's almost like every month there's a new series of layoffs.
They innovated too hard.
Yeah. A labor ministry official said, although companies are facing a labor shortage, soaring material prices have pressured their earnings, prompting them to hold off hiring.
Despite recent improvements in job availability, the ratio is still below the pre-pandemic level. In 2019, this ratio stood at 1.55. So not quite the 2 jobs for every person that you had mentioned. Maybe it was in nicer times, but
yeah, it was a while ago. Yeah. The unemployment rate in January fell to the level registered in February 2020, when the country's economy was not yet affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, but the overall situation has not fully recovered.
Data from the Internal Affairs Ministry showed the total number of unemployed stood at a seasonally adjusted 1.67 million people in January, down 2.3% from the previous month.
Among them, 680,000 people voluntarily left their jobs, down 2.9%, while 420,000 people were dismissed, up 7.7%.
That second figure is more interesting. Lots of people getting fired, eh? The unemployment rate was 2.6% for men, down 0.1% from the previous month, while the rate for women stayed flat at 2.2%.
Parker, it's interesting. One of my Japanese friends, all of her friends have quit their jobs. They all used to work at big Japanese companies, and after COVID, they've quit. A lot of them have become sole proprietors and designers, kind of like, pivoting. They don't want to work for any large company anymore. Similar to what we see in the States, I think, a little bit.
Well, I think this is compounded by the fact that, as the, legal framework sort of alludes to, women in major Japanese companies just don't get the same career advancement opportunities as men do.
Yeah.
And, they catch on to this. And so people quit and they'll do something else. And oftentimes it ends up working out more than well for them.
No, for sure. Especially with people that are working in more technical fields, like technical designers, programmers, whatever. Wouldn't it be great if everyone could just be a sole proprietor and there's this community of people that kind of help each other out? That's almost like a de facto kind of ecosystem that functions the way a company should, providing people with stuff. And then you can do yoga outside and experiment with the local mushrooms.
Whoa.
I realized as I was trying to describe a good scenario, I ended up sounding like a hippie commune or something, but
yeah, but I think most people who are actually sole proprietors or own small businesses like us know that the reality of being a sole proprietor or owning a small business means you work about 10 to 100 times more than you would if you worked at a big company. So
yeah, you basically never you can never stop working. You have to set the limits on yourself, I would say.
I've been working 7 days a week for the last, when did January 1st start?
The only time I don't work is when I shut my phone off. or computer. There's always some device that's on and beeping.
Yeah, I sleep away from my phone for that exact reason.
Yep.
Up next, the number of listed Japanese islands more than doubles under government recount.
Kyoto News has reported that the number of listed Japanese islands has more than doubled to 14,125 under a recount, compared to the 6,852 last tallied around 35 years ago.
The increase does not change the size of Japan's territory or territorial waters, and the new figure is due to the improved accuracy of survey technology with the digitization of maps.
Until now, the government had been using the number released in 1987 by the Japan Coast Guard, which had manually counted islands with a circumference of at least 100 meters shown on a map of Japan.
That sounds like a job that I would definitely not want to have. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi.
Get this American out of here.
Moves to reassess the number of listed islands followed criticism that the data was old. That's over 30 years old. The new figure could affect entries in educational and other materials.
For the recount, the GSI said that it had selected islands that had a circumference of at least 100 meters and that were judged to be naturally formed among the over 120,000 islands automatically measured by computer based on GSI's electronic national land map.
The islands were cross-checked against past maps to exclude artificially created reclaimed land.
The uninhabited Okinotori Island, regarded by Japan as its southernmost territory, but by Taiwan as a rock, is included along with other islands under Japanese law.
Islands in lakes and river channels are not included in the figure.
The GSI, under the Land Ministry, said it defined islands in line with the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, which states that an island is a naturally formed area of land surrounded by water, which is above water at high tide.
I've got 2 comments to make on that. First, I expect, and if it does not exist, I demand that this United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea has a pirate, or at least somebody who talks like a pirate.
I mean, it's the law of the sea. You've got to have a pirate representing the pirates' interests.
Could someone get that guy to stop drinking?
Shut up, it's only rum. You scurvy dog.
Now, the Law of the Sea is a pretty epic title for it, I think.
Needs a pirate.
I'm sure it has some pirates in there.
My second point is that it doubled, right?
Yeah.
It's not like they found a few extra islands. They found more than twice the number of islands.
Oh, yeah.
And, I mean, you know, GPS and whatnot's been around for quite a while now. So, like, why did it take them 30 plus years to find all these new islands? They just, you know, didn't think, you know, maybe we should use this computer thing to, like, find new islands. I mean, maybe there were more important things to do than count islands, but I think it's important.
My question is 100 meters. Is 100 meters big enough to, like, build a house on?
Well, I mean, the average house in Japan is like 100 square meters, right?
Right.
So if it's a circumference of 100 meters, that means it's 100 meters round. And so if you divide that by 3.145678, whatever the hell pi is, you get like the radius, right?
You know, I watched a movie Glass Onion where it was like a eccentric billionaire who had a compound, or, you know, basically a beautiful house on this private island. I'm trying to figure out how big that was. Basically, I'm trying to figure out how many potential of these private islands could billionaires and millionaires build their own, private property on.
I think we need to know more about the islands, but I just divided 100 meters circumference by pi, because you can do that in Google, and that comes to a diameter of 60 meters.
Oh, okay.
Which would be like probably not big enough to build a house on, but obviously it's at least 100 meters, so they might have found some big ones.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, the new data also mentioned it doesn't increase the size of Japan's landmass. So I think what this means is they found a whole bunch of really tiny islands.
Or what Taiwan refers to them as rocks.
Rocks.
Yeah, they found a lot of rocks.
Yeah. 60 meter in diameter rocks.
I wonder what we could do with all these rocks.
You could stand on top of them and be like, I'm king of the world! Or you could give them names.
So I guess my idea of, creating this new ecosystem where billionaires can build private houses is not going to happen because they're all rocks.
Well, it's actually interesting you mentioned that, because recently something that made Japanese news was this Chinese national purchased an island in southern Japan and posted all of these social media videos about it. And everyone was saying, you should plant a Chinese flag there. And there was this big uproar on Japanese social media. We shouldn't have these Chinese people buying our islands. So, it could be a national security issue depending on where the island is. But more than likely, it's just some crazy rich person buying an island because they can.
Yeah. All right, and up next on Yena Bill, y'all, we're going to be talking about Honda's plan to bring private jets closer to the public with rural Japan service.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Tokyo Wave.
Yena Bill, y'all.
A Nikkei Asia article reported on how Honda Motor will launch a transportation service that combines its business jets and cars this year in Japan, catering to people traveling to or from rural areas with few options.
The new service using the Honda Jet will be bundled with a car or motorcycle rentals, creating Japan's first end-to-end integration of modes of transport that include a business jet. The automaker said it hopes the service will bring more visitors and business to rural areas and help stimulate the economies there.
I gotta say, the motorcycle sounds cooler than the car.
I was gonna say that.
Can you imagine, rolling up in the PJ and then taking off on a dirt bike?
I mean, when they get the option to, when they're booking this, they get the Honda Jet, sir, would you like a car or motorcycle? I think a lot of the kind of people that are going to use this service would be like, want a fucking motorcycle.
Do you have any of those crotch rockets? I want one that has a sound like this. You got any like that? The manager in charge of this new project at Honda said, quote, "We want to make the jet an even more accessible mode of transportation."
Honda plans to create a dedicated app to let customers book and pay for flights, as well as vehicle rentals for getting around at their destinations, such as tourist attractions. A mobility as a service model that includes business jets is highly unusual worldwide.
Honda also aims to bring the service to other Asian markets.
Previously, the Honda Jet was used mostly by corporations that purchased or leased the aircraft.
A competitor that offers a business jet charter service in Japan charges about 1 million to 1.5 million yen. That's roughly $7,000 to $10,000 US per hour. Honda wants to undercut this while also considering introducing dynamic pricing, under which prices are adjusted according to demand.
Honda will now reach out to a wider scope of corporate users, including healthcare institutions that provide medical tourism, as well as companies sending groups of employees on business trips. The automaker also envisions teaming up with railroad or bus companies, travel agencies, and local governments to serve individual travelers in the future.
Honda is able to allow customers to change reservations up to 24 hours before boarding because it owns the fleet and will handle aircraft operations within the group. Such flexibility may not be available at competitors that lease jets owned by a third party or outsources their operations.
In a press flight on Honda Jet, reporters experienced minimal turbulence and noise. The jet features plenty of space for 4 passengers.
One reporter quoted, "This champagne is delicious." Are we off the ground yet?
You know, one time when I was taking off on a commercial jet, like I think it was my first or second time to Japan, there was like a group of, they were all like tourists going to Japan. And like the plane was literally just like on the runway moving to the left. And a bunch of them were like, "Are we off the ground yet?" They were like from like middle of nowhere, like I don't even know, in America. And I was like thinking in my head, I'm like, no. Have you like never ridden in a plane before? Like, you'll know when we're off the ground. It was literally just turning, you know what I mean? Like on the tarmac or whatever.
I mean, it was a group of people, right?
It was a group of people, and they're all...
And not one of them thought to look outside.
No, they were all looking at each other inside the plane, you know.
America, the land of people who don't know how to look outside the window.
Pretty much.
Especially in places like rural Japan, flying is an extremely time-saving mode of travel, even for a short haul, where Japanese winding mountain roads are all over the place. Business jet passengers also do not have to go through check-ins and airport security required for scheduled flights. Nobody knows this better than Carlos Ghosn.
The Honda Jet Elite, which will be used for the new service, will have a capacity of 6 passengers. The aircraft's range is roughly 2,700 kilometers, but the maximum flight distance for the service will be about half of that, from one end of Japan's main island to the other. Honda has sold 10 units of the Honda Jet domestically at a price of 700 million yen to 800 million yen.
Worldwide, Honda has sold over 200 units since the Honda Jet's commercial debut in 2016 and has stayed atop small to mid-sized jet sales rankings for 5 years through 2021. The jet features an innovative design of engines mounted over the wings, creating more cabin space, as well as cost-cutting techniques built through Honda's experience in auto manufacturing.
According to Indian researcher Markets and Japanese peer Global Information, the global midsize business jet market will double between 2021 and 2030 to $10.7 billion.
According to Honda, Kumamoto to Ota in Kyushu takes only 30 minutes between airports. The time required for boarding procedures can also be shorter than that of regular airlines.
What is of concern is the price. ANA Business Jet offers a round trip from Nagoya to Toyama, Matsumoto, and Nagoya for approximately 2.5 million yen, while Fuji Business Jet charges 660,000 yen per hour.
Since Honda can provide its own aircraft, there is an expectation that the price will be lower than the market price. Furthermore, Honda also offers the Every Go car sharing service and can provide airport access. If these are connected by a mobility as a service or MaaS application, a mobility service that links air and land could be realized.
For example, if a round trip from Kumamoto City to Oita City could be offered for about 500,000 yen as a package price that includes car sharing before and after the flight, it would be a very attractive service.
Yeah, cheap private jet sounds pretty cool.
Sounds interesting. Not for people that are worried about CO2 emissions, though.
Yeah, Aaron, before the podcast, we were talking about private jet travel, and you were saying that you'd never want to fly in a private jet just because of the turbulence and the CO2 emissions.
Mostly because of the turbulence. I mean, some people listening who have ridden in a private jet are probably like, it's not that turbulent. But like,
they're probably drunk.
I hate flying. And one of the reasons I love the large aircraft, that fly between Japan and the US or Japan and Europe is because they're gigantic. They can absorb the shock of like really rough turbulence. Knock on wood, I've actually never had a really bad experience internationally flying. I remember being on some pretty like gnarly British Airway flights was like pretty bad turbulence, but still you can feel that the aircraft is so big that it's really like absorbing it. You know what I mean? The small aircraft, man, I don't know, like the smaller they get, the more you can feel the turbulence. It freaks me out. I don't like to fly, so.
Yeah, I feel like I've got like the exact opposite experience because my uncle is a FedEx pilot who flies 777s, and also I've been on countless rides in his small aircraft, Cessnas.
From a young age?
Yeah.
That makes a difference too.
Yeah, and also I've even flown the aircraft for short periods of time.
Oh, wow.
And the scariest experience I ever had was I was flying a Piper Cub, which literally has a stick in the middle. That is how you fly a Piper Cub, with a stick.
Oh, wow.
It's not a joystick. It's just a friggin' stick.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And like for the first, 10 or 15 minutes, I was like, holy shit, am I gonna fucking crash this thing? But after a while, you actually kind of get used to it, and it kind of got kind of fun. I was like, stick is all right.
Yeah, yeah. So a Dutch consultancy said, new analysis commissioned by Greenpeace International shows that 1,040 private jets flew in and out of airports serving the Swiss mountain resort of Davos during the week of 2022 World Economic Forum, the WEF, causing CO2 emissions from private jets 4 times greater than an average week. And, I guess I'm not sure how long the event is, but basically the amount of jets flying to and from was equivalent to the same amount of 350,000 cars emitting CO2. My sister, who is really into this, says the 2 worst things for the environment are cows and private jets.
But I like both of those things.
You should look into the cow thing, too. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's all the cows farting into the atmosphere.
Literally, it's just cows farting. There's so many scientific papers on this. It is quite wild to...
And think of all the people eating steak in private jets.
It's probably like the number one thing to serve there. Yeah, so you're killing a lot of birds with the same stone if you're trying to, destroy the planet.
Flight attendant, bring me a steak. I want to make sure I get as much out of these emissions as possible.
Yeah, I know we were talking earlier about, I said I wouldn't ride in a private jet. But commercial airlines, when it's fully packed, and if you're not in like, Comfort Plus or business or like first class, it really sucks. Economy just sucks for a lot of the international flights. I guess I wouldn't say no to a private jet ride if someone else is paying.
I mean, if someone was like, want to ride on my PJ? I don't think there's but one answer that I could possibly give in response. Hell yeah! Where are we going?
Yeah.
Wait a second. I don't care.
I would like to do some more research into the turbulence. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe a lot of the new jets are built really well and handle the turbulence, even though they're very small, vehicles passing through the sky.
Well, I think it also has to do with the pilot because, smart pilots look at maps and, they can tell where turbulence is.
Right,
obviously, if you're covering a long distance, and you have to kind of go within the aircraft's range. You have a limited sort of number of options that you can take. But if that's not the case, I mean, you can fly around turbulence, you go over it, go below it. I mean, a good pilot is obviously what the difference between bad turbulence and low turbulence usually ends up counting down to.
Good point. My most recent trip back to the States, I did Delta, and it wasn't the traditional, what is it, 777? I forget the largest ones Well, the
777 is actually bigger than the 787 Dreamliner, which is the newest one.
Delta uses an Airbus now to go from Haneda to most of their destinations, like Atlanta, Detroit, which this Airbus, and I think it's a combination of the pilot and the Airbus. Dude, I felt no turbulence the entire flight. It was incredible. Which the smaller Airbuses that do domestic flights, I usually feel a lot of turbulence, but I think this is like a new hybrid Airbus or something. And also I think the pilots just know their shit. Like if you feel a tiny bit of turbulence, you can tell that they're adjusting. They're like going up and down, to like get out of the rough air. So
yeah, because I mean the last thing that a pilot wants is a bunch of angry passengers.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, it only takes a little bit of turbulence to give a whole lot of people a lot of reasons to complain and ask for more of those tiny bottles of liquor.
Oh, yeah. I've thought about being on planes or being on the plane recently, going back to the States and coming back to Japan. I really think that like pilots and a lot of the cabin attendants, their salaries need to be like doubled. They're just under so much stress to like maintain like peace and like like I don't know, during the flight. It's nuts. Like I don't know how much pilots make, but I imagine it's not like as much as like guys in Silicon Valley make that are like doing software engineering.
You might be surprised. Pilot salaries can be quite high. $500,000 a year plus.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, then.
The flight attendants, on the other hand, though, I don't think they're making $500,000.
Yeah. I mean, like, just everyone involved with airplanes. I think all those salaries need to be raised. Even the people on the tarmac that do a lot of the repairs in Japan, they do. They take such a good care of everything too. They're constantly just. It's crazy to watch.
Definitely. Well, and I mean, also, you can always tell the difference in the food that's been prepared on the Japan to wherever flight versus the wherever to Japan flight.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
Man, it's so bad. It's so
funny
bad.
because it's the same company, but
yeah.
I mean, bottom line is Japanese people on the whole just tend to care more about their jobs.
Oh yeah. And I mean, when you're on the flight too, Japanese people are taking pictures of the in-flight food. It's part of the experience, Yeah,
it also helps that it doesn't suck and like gets thrown at you.
Yeah. No, it was so wild because I did Delta both going back and coming back to Japan. The flight from Detroit back to Haneda was so strange. I was even like, I'm like, why the hell does Detroit go to Haneda? Like those two cities, like, I have no idea why there's maybe, I don't know, car industry or something.
I mean, I think that's the original reason. But these days, when it comes to, international flights, I mean, it's all about connections.
Yeah.
Because everybody's connecting, right? And so whenever, you hear like a flight delay, you see all these people like start getting all like flustered and pissed off and talking to the flight attendant because they're going to miss their connection.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you shouldn't have made your connection 55 minutes after the last flight, bro.
At least 3 hours is my how do you say, my rule.
I'll do 2.
Do 2? Yeah.
Yeah. But anything less than 2 and you're just asking for it.
Oh yeah. Especially if you're going back to the States and have to go through the security. It's not a fun experience.
Welcome to the United States. Please take off your shoes and be prepared to be frisked.
Well, there's nobody that says welcome. It's just more getting yelled at. After being on a plane for like 13 hours, getting yelled at. And it's like, dude, please.
Go to the left!
I'm about to die. Could you guys just help me out? Where do I go? You know?
Help you out? What do you think I am?
That's not my job.
Yep. That sounds like the answer you would get.
Yeah. Not my department.
What do you think I am, a airport concierge? Would you like me to hold your bags for you too, Mr. I don't know your name?
And see, this is the big difference between, you know, airports in the US and Japan is because it's a cultural thing. Like the airport itself is basically this, you know, connection point for like 8 different types of companies. Like some of them are government, some of them are private. But in Japan, the people working inside the airport know that. And it's like, okay, let's try to make this as peaceful for everyone as possible. In America, it's like, no, that's not my responsibility. And if you get lost and miss your flight, that's all on you. If you get stuck in this airport for 3 days, that's all on you. We don't care about trying to make peace. I don't know. I'm ranting a bit, but
I mean, like, especially in Japanese airports, like, you know, there's that little electric car that goes around the terminal.
yeah.
And like, if your gate is like far away, even if you're like totally on time, they'll give you a free ride. They're like, come on.
Yeah. Also, there's what do you call it? Carts everywhere. So like even like I usually have a lot of carry-on luggage, and I can always get a cart, go shopping. You know, it's
And
really,
that's the problem is not the existence of carts. The problem is that in America, they make you pay for the carts.
they make you pay for the carts, or the carts aren't organized, or they're disgusting. Like it's just, I don't
Or
know.
all of the above.
Yeah.
Yeah, flying in the United States is not fun.
Yeah.
But anyway, private jets, terrible for the environment. Also cows. Stay tuned.
Hey, listeners, that's right. You listener right there.
Who do you think should be our next guest on Tokyo Wave? Let us know. Drop us a line via Twitter or email us at wave@tokyowave.jp.
We hope you enjoyed Tokyo Wave.
If you haven't already, you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, or YouTube.
Join us again next week on Tokyo Wave.